In the same way that we conflate resilience with self-coercion, I think we conflate self-love and self-care with selfishness. Um, we conflate self-care with laziness and complacency. And sometimes that can be one of the biggest obstacles for people to commit to a yoga practice, is they simply feel that it's a very selfish thing to do. They feel guilty putting the time aside to take care of themselves. In terms of, cultivating self-love, one of the most powerful things that we can do, whether this is on our yoga mat or whether this is something that we just do as a part of our daily routine when we wake up, is to be able to befriend ourselves just as we find ourselves. And that seems contradictory to this idea of building resilience, in that we might wake up in the morning and notice that we're feeling fatigue, that our real experience is that we're tired, that we're exhausted. We might wake up in the morning and notice that depression's passing through us, or some sadness is passing through us, or some fear is passing through us. And the key here is that if we can really befriend that experience and welcome it, and understand that there's no part of ourself that has to go into exile to do this practice, that we can bring everything and anything onto the mat, then we can attend to it. If we don't know what it is that's rising, we can't attend to it. If we're pushing it down, denying or suppressing, we can't attend to it. This is what one of the components that the New Zealand mental health system is looking at now with teenage suicide is we have a generation of people, and in fact many generations of people in New Zealand, because we've always had a high suicide rate, who've grown up around the model of the strong man, because most of it is a very strong percentage of males who commit suicide as opposed to females, are much, much higher. We've got this model of the tough, rugby player who never cries and never gives in and always pushes through. And what we're finding now is we need to encourage our youth, and we need to encourage anyone who is experiencing difficulty to be able to reach out and say, I'm in trouble. No, I'm not coping. And that first step, paradoxically, that first step of saying I'm not coping, or I'm not able to do this on my own, or I don't know how to manage these overwhelming feelings, is the stepping stone towards rebuilding some kind of stability. And we can't rebuild stability if we can't welcome what's arising. That in itself is a loving act. And when I reflect on this, I remember a dear friend of mine years ago drove all the way out from the city, so it's an hour's drive, and I didn't know she was coming, and I heard this knock on the door, and I opened the door, and there she was, and she looked absolutely shattered. I could see she was exhausted. I could see she was at her wit's end, and I said, are you okay? She said, oh yeah, I'm okay. You don't seem okay. Like, why would you drive an hour to come here if you were totally okay? And I just looked at her and said, I'm going to draw a bath. And while you're having that bath, I'm going to make a meal, and then we'll talk. And that moment of just meeting her just as she was um, wasn't hard for me, but I think it's very difficult when we're meeting ourselves, when we are both the person who's opening the door and we're the person on the other side of the door, and what we're seeing is maybe not the best version of ourselves. So we would never slam the door in a good friend's face. And this befriending of the self is really learning how to open the door, not to slam the door on ourselves, but to open the door and see, what is it that I need right now to rebuild my sense of stability.